Okay. We're good to go. All right. How is everyone doing out there on this Friday, April 17th, right?
17th April, absolutely.
I'm losing track of the days. This lockdown is making my head all hazy and clouded.
Every day is the same.
Every day is the exact same. All right. How's everyone doing out there? Welcome to Duran Live 59, I believe, 59. And we hope everyone is doing well wherever you are in the world. Most likely you are in some form of a lockdown or a quarantine or something along those lines. Hopefully you're not, and hopefully you're allowed to go out and enjoy the day. I know that I am in lockdown here, and I've been in lockdown for close to a month and a half, pretty much a month and a half, a little closer to 2 months. And I know we have someone in Moscow who is in lockdown as well, a very strict lockdown. It's the host of RT's Crosstalk, Mr. Peter Lavelle. Peter, how are you doing?
Very quarantined, yes. At the beginning, it's on Tuesday of this week, the I guess quarantine plus, you could call it, came into effect. And I've said over the last few weeks that the vast majority of people respected it, but there was a large enough minority of people that didn't. I have to say, much to my surprise, up until Tuesday of this week, there's huge construction work going on around me, and it didn't stop. I mean, 24/7, they were working, building. Just, you could hear it at night, wouldn't keep me up or anything, but they were working. And then on Tuesday, boom. And now I feel like I live in a ghost town. So, that's a strong criticism on my part, okay? Because a lot of these workers are migrant workers from the stands, and the living conditions that they have that I can see, the sanitation is certainly not up to par, which of course is an issue in spreading the virus. But now you need a pass, and if you are digitally able, you can contact the mayor's office and you can get a pass, and you can get it on your phone. And if you go out in public, you must show it to the authorities. It's one of those little crazy bar things. They shoot it, and okay, fine, get back in your car. If not, they say go home. Okay, so they're taking it very seriously. The problem is, and again, I say with great embarrassment, Alexander Mercouris probably knows the numbers for today. I don't. But Russia has been I should actually say Moscow has not been very successful in flattening the curve. And it gives me worry that this, we're here, April 17th, this could go well, for us here in Moscow, this could go well into May.
All right. And we have in London someone who is also in some sort of lockdown. I still haven't quite understood what the UK
the government
policy
doesn't.
Yeah, what the policy is on what's going on there. But Alexander, I know that you are staying home these days in these past couple of weeks. So how are things going in London?
Well, it's a much gentler lockdown than it's been in Moscow, and it's been gentler right the way through. I have to say we've got no such things as passes. You still see people walking about quite openly. I know construction work is continuing because I've seen it happen. Even private building, which is most remarkable. I mean, people still being able to do house repairs and workers coming round, and you see scaffolding. It's quite extraordinary. And we take our dogs to our local park, and we see people there walking around quite freely, often in groups. And the most extraordinary thing was we saw a group of policemen coming along yesterday to talk to one of these groups. And I noticed that neither the police nor the people they were talking to were wearing face masks. Very rare to see people wearing face masks in my part of London. And the police just then ambled off with nothing very much being done. So it was all
police officers in Moscow wear masks, and I think all of them wear gloves as well.
Well, there you go. Nothing like that here. I mean, it was very strange. Now, I've had contacts from people outside London, and I get the impression that in some places it's taken a lot more seriously, but it's extremely patchy, and it reflects what people are, the sort of fact that we're not getting clear signals from the government. The government doesn't seem to be very proactive at all in handling this thing. And of course, Peter was talking about cases in Moscow, cases in Russia, cases in Britain are on a completely different scale. We're talking about many, many more people now here in Britain being infected and ill. And I would point out that infection figures that the Russians are releasing, and then, you know, Russia is growing at about 4,000 a day. That's Russia. Moscow, I think it's sort of started to stabilize. It's been around, it's still going up, but not perhaps quite at the pace it was a few days ago, but it was still 1,900 a day. But because the Russians test far more, Russia tests around 110 to 120,000 people a day. And that, I understand, is just the government. Private industry also does tests, which I don't think are appearing in the statistics. I may be wrong about that. In Britain, we're only doing around 15,000 tests a day. It's a huge difference. So amongst those people who are tested in Russia, there's about 40% are showing no symptoms and are not ill. In Britain, it's only if you're ill that you're being tested. So you mustn't make direct comparisons. They can be extremely misleading. By the way, what I should say about Russia is also true of Germany. The Germans have also taken a much more proactive line. But we, coming back to myself, we're all right. We are very fortunate people in that we own a big house. Peter has seen it. We have a garden. Very unusual for people in London to have gardens and big houses. So I'm very, very sorry for those people who feel that who stay in their homes all day. Many of them living in very small apartments in London. Many of them living in you know, if they're young people, many of them share rooms. I mean, it's not unusual at all in London for that to be the case. And that must be an ordeal for them. And also, I'm very sorry for people whose families have been separated. I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he was telling me that when the restrictions on movement came down, his wife was far away in Devon, looking after her mother. And now, of course, they're separated. So it's a husband and wife, and they're separated from each other. But for us personally, that's to say for my wife and myself, it's tolerable, though obviously we're also affected. And one of the things that's happened is that my sleep patterns have gone completely askew. I mean, I was never much of a sleeper anyway, but to the extent that I ever was, I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night, I go to bed in strange hours. Anyway, it's all very surreal.
Yeah. All right, it is very surreal.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Remember to hit that like, everybody. If you're joining us, hit that like. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do us a huge favor and subscribe if you like what you see and what you hear. And also underneath the video, you will see a join button. Become a Duran member, join our community, and you will get all kinds of good things coming down the pipeline, including some ebooks and some other stuff that we have planned for our community members. Let's see where people are joining us from before we get started on the grand reopening, or it's planned to be a grand reopening, which will probably be phased out according to the latest guidelines we have seen from Trump and just about from every country that I've been looking at. We are looking at a phased reopening, but let's see where people are joining us from. And let's start the live stream afterwards. Spartan Warrior Queen moderating. Thank you very much, Spartan Warrior Queen. We really, really appreciate all the help that you provide moderating, and you always do a great job. We have Elizaveta from Russia. How are you doing, Elizaveta? Skill from Arizona. How are you doing in Arizona? I lived in Arizona for 5 years. I love Arizona very, very much. From East Germany, Albuquerque, Northamptonshire, Valley S. So hi, how are you doing, Valley S? Iron Horse in Spain, day 35, locked in apartment, can't go out. You can walk a dog, but you can't walk yourself. I think my human rights have just disappeared. Lilac from Hong Kong, China. How's everything going in Hong Kong? From County Cork, from Ireland, from New Brunswick. Let's see. Russian ballet very disappointed in the cancellation of the May 9th parade. Putin caved in. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
My favorite event of the year.
Yeah. Yep. Bristol, UK, from Iran. Tasso from Australia. How are things in Australia? From Sydney, wide awake, 11:19 p.m. How you doing, Paula? Good to have you here with us. Alan from Ireland. Lachette, how are you doing? Alan Watson, how are you, Alan? New Zealand, West Virginia, Tokyo, Japan. How are things going in Tokyo? We hear they're also under lockdown. Singapore, UK, Puerto Rico, Alberta, Quebec City, Canada. Let's see, Gloucestershire, UK, Kent, England, from Holland, the Netherlands, Wales. I think the Netherlands has taken a very relaxed approach to handling the virus, the last I heard.
Like
a little strict. It's not too strict. There's a little bit of a lockdown, but not too much. From Gloria, Phoenix, Arizona. How things in Phoenix, Arizona, Portugal, Spain, Australia, Scotland. All right, cool. Costa Rica. Awesome. All right, let's get rolling, guys. Reopen. Peter, good idea, bad idea. How do you feel about reopen? Trump's announcement for the US, maybe some other countries in Europe that are also rolling it out. What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, because they're working people, their lives are on the line, okay? And that's my primary concern. With over 22 million people in, 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks applying for unemployment in the United States, that is 10 years of job creation wiped out. 10 years of job creation gone in a little over a month. So people need to get back to work. My personal opinion, I am not a scientist, I'm not a specialist, and everyone knows I'm not in this area, but it seems to me that there was an overreaction. There should have been a much more focused attention on people that are most vulnerable. And because my attitude is, a massive economic turn down, we'll see more lives lost to that turn down than to the virus itself. Okay. Now that is cold pragmatism on my part, but we have no idea, and anyone that claims that they know are talking out of their sleeve. Is that we all know it's going to be a V. It's going to go down. It's going down. Now, are we going to get a U? Are we going to get a V? Or are we going to get an L? Okay, and nobody knows that at all right now. But without economic activity, it's for sure going to continue to collapse. And I really worry that I think people are overly optimistic, and I think they're politically motivated that it's going to shoot right back up. There's no evidence of that in my mind that that's going to be the case. I hope it is, but unfortunately we had President Macron talking about more bailouts and stimulus, and in the same sentence he says, the right wing and left wing populists are going to win. He actually said that in the last news cycle, okay? And then you have the presidential election in the United States. And we all know that, and I was always dubious about it, check our past videos, that, Trump was always heralding the high levels of the markets, the stock markets, which I've always been quite dubious of because it doesn't really have that much of an impact on the average person. So, politics is in this. We can't deny it. But number one, I think there was an overreaction. Number two, we desperately got to get people back to work, okay? The longer they're out of work from the jobs that they had, the greater chance those jobs will completely disappear because they didn't have much leverage in those jobs in the first place. So getting it back may be impossible for many. And this $1,200 check thing, I think is an insult. I think it's truly an insult to people that lost their work for reasons that had nothing to do with them. It's a black swan event here. And people, these economists that go around like Lindsey and politicians like Lindsey Graham saying, well, these unemployment benefits that we're providing, well, they might make more money than they were working. Come on, Lindsey, can we do this for 3 to 6 months to make sure people get on their feet? Okay, can we do that? I mean, you want to bail out, the what is it, those like cruise lines. Well, I mean, the cruise lines, they're not even registered in the United States. They don't even pay American taxes. Why do you want to bail out the cruise lines and not bail out Main Street? Okay, so yes, to answer your question, it's time to get back to work. The longer they wait, the more damage we will see, not just over the next few months, over years.
All right. Alexander, real quick from Reg Smith says that Alex is wrong. Government stringency index is 86 for Holland compared to 52 for Sweden. Okay, thank you for letting us know. It looks like Holland has taken a lockdown approach to handling everything. On that note, Alexander, maybe a U or a V for the US, maybe a U or a V for Russia, maybe a UV for China and other countries, European Union, UK, maybe an L, or maybe a U or V for the UK.
Well,
EU, I think will be an L.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'd rather think so. Let me just talk about the situation, because of course I've been getting information now from all kinds of sources, and I'm afraid it's more worrying than I had hoped even a short time ago. It seems that this is a more infectious disease. At least these are what I'm hearing are from people who are experts in this, or people who work on front lines, scientists, health workers, whatever, that is more infectious than had been appreciated, and unfortunately that it's even more dangerous than had been appreciated. The latest view is that the survival rate of those who become ill, which is not the same, by the way, as those who become infected, but that the death rate can be as high as 4% unless proper treatment is provided, and if no treatment at all is provided, then it would rise even further. So that looks like a very dangerous infection, an epidemic situation. Now, you have to keep some parts of the economy working, because without some parts of the economy working, everything grounds to a stop. You don't get food distributed, you don't get electricity, you don't get internet, you don't get those sort of things, without which there cannot be any kind of life whatsoever. So yes, we do need to get parts of the economy working and organized, and systematic and well-organized reopenings of the economy are, I think, inevitable and necessary. The danger is that until we get some kind of grip on this situation, if we relax too closely, and I'm again talking about what people have been telling me, the danger is that this thing will resurge, in which case we will get another clampdown, because another lockdown, and the demoralization effects of that would be enormous. They would far outweigh keeping sort of lockdowns going at the present level. Now, what all that seems to me to build up towards is that government's approach to supporting economic activity has been completely wrong. I've been worrying about this for some time. I've been worrying about the fact that the focus has been on supporting big corporations, big stock markets, those sort of things. It seems to me that the much more important thing that ought to be done at this present time is helping people through their debt crises, their rent arrears, those kind of things, so that when the economy does restart, which it will eventually do in a big way, that those sort of people are working properly. Now, this is my feeling today. I've been evolving about this. It may be that I will hear other things. It may be that I will hear other things over the course of this program. But as I said, I've had information, and that's made me feel rather more concerned than I was. If you look at my own line, right at the beginning, back in December, January, I wasn't taking this terribly seriously. I began to be concerned in February. I began to accept that this was a serious problem in March. Now, I have to say, it's beginning to look like it's an even more serious problem than I had realized.
Well, again, we always have to be very careful here. I mean, this is public health. But if in looking at countries like the United States, a very large country, continental-sized country,
yes.
I really do believe there should be a devolution of authority. I think that governors and mayors of major cities, of big cities, they should start making decisions on how to start stimulating where they are and to protect them from the outside. Does that mean like having roadblocks and stuff like that? Yeah, it might include that, okay? And this new Abbott quick testing process that is being touted, that may be an answer too. But large countries like the United States having a total lockdown doesn't seem to be reasonable to me. It's over the top, and it should be decentralized, and because some areas have been hit harder than others, all right? And areas that have it under control or have very few cases or the curve's been completely flattened out, I don't think they should be punished, okay? I think they should be able to stop their economic activity. What I'm talking about, not a blanket policy. I'm looking at incrementalism, okay?
Yes.
I can create a momentum of itself to get us, so we have to stop the fall because we continue to descend, okay? I'm not even thinking about going back up, okay? I'm trying to stop. We got to find a bottom here.
Right. Well, what I've been, because I've these points that you've been making. I mean, what I understand is that in order to get into a situation where you can start reopening, regions, you need to ramp up testing much more to know what the kind of level of infection is. And one of the problems is that there was lots of hope invested in antibodies tests, which would have shown who was immune, who was not, those sort of things. But those are not going anywhere near as fast as had been anticipated. So we are, and normal testing, the kind that we're hearing about, is both, it's slow and it's very expensive. It costs about $50 a person. So, when you hear about, 100,000+ tests done a day, that actually requires a big and very well organized effort over large areas. So at the moment, we are behind in testing. This is one thing that I've been hearing. And the other thing is, when you do open various regions, and I think everybody accepts this is something that has to happen, as I said, some degree of normal economic activity has to happen. You need to take steps to protect those regions in order to prevent things spiraling down again. So I'm afraid I'm starting to wonder whether, rather than an overreaction at the beginning, part of the problem has been that we have been too slow taking measures too earlier in the curve when it might have made a difference, and that we're still racing to catch up with a problem which, though not entirely out of control, is further advanced than it should have been. If we're talking about Moscow specifically, Peter, one of the points that's been made to me is that perhaps Moscow should have been sealed off from the rest of the country much sooner than it was.
I agree.
Guys, you can make the argument that we're never going to get rid of the virus. You're never going to get it to zero.
No.
So obviously you're going to have to start getting back to normal life, and you're going to have to start opening things up. And you can also make the argument, and yes, I see the chat with Dr. Shiva and Stefan Molyneux. I recommend everybody see that video. It was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. And I think it was published last night, but it's an incredible hour and a half. Everybody see that video. The point being is that you have to get people back to normal lives. You're never going to get the virus count, the infections, to zero. And as human beings, we need interaction. We need air. We need sun.
Yes.
We need purpose. Right. We need company. We need purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
We should take care of ourselves. We should exercise. We should get a lot of vitamin C, a lot of vitamin D, get zinc in there. The whole hydrochloroquine thing, the Anthony Fauci, the Dr. Fauci thing, also the Bill Gates, also leads me to believe that a lot of this, especially in the US and maybe in everyone's respective countries, is also political.
Yes.
I mean, I think there is a case to also be made that the mainstream media, the 99% of it that leans towards the Democrats, they don't want a Trump, quote unquote, victory in all of this with the hydrochloroquine and all of that.
Yeah.
And I also think there's definitely a lot of conflicts of interest with Fauci and Dr. Birx, a lot of conflict of interest because they're monetarily invested in a lot of patents and a lot of vaccine methods along with Bill Gates. So my feeling is we have to cut through a lot of this BS.
Yes.
And as human beings, we have to find a way, a creative way, a thinking way to get back to our.
I want to stress what I said in my first answer is that depression, joblessness creates despair, addiction, alcoholism, suicide. Okay, we're not going to be able to completely wipe this out. Okay, and if we're going to wait for some kind of a vaccine. Well, then
no.
Everybody should write a will. Okay.
No.
Because I'm sorry. But I mean,
no, we can't.
There's always risks in life. Okay.
We can't.
And plus, the people that are making the decision about life and death are already taken care of. Okay. So, they have a conflict of interest too, because for them, it's quite rhetorical. Well, to be a good person and all that. Well, that doesn't matter if you're married and you have to support 2 kids and you've already missed two rent payments and you're defaulting on your student loan. Okay, I mean, I'm sorry. There's a difference between the people that are making these decisions and the people that are being affected by these decisions. Let's keep that in proportion.
Well, can I just say a few things first? I mean, first of all, we can't wait for a vaccine. I mean, a vaccine is at least 18 months away, and that's 18 months from now. I mean, there are vaccines that are apparently still that are showing promise, and we might have a possible conception of a vaccine by around September, apparently. But in order to get that really up and running properly and distributed, we're looking at around the end of 2021 at the earliest, even if corners are cut. That's what I'm hearing. Drugs trials are a much more promising possibility. In other words, drugs that will help to ameliorate this condition. At the moment, and this is I'm hearing from people in the NHS, they're not going hugely well in the sense that most of the drugs that have been tested, and that includes hydrochloroquine, apparently the responses have not yet been anywhere near as good as people had hoped. But that doesn't mean that there won't be. We will eventually get there with drugs, and probably that will happen by around midsummer. Other things that it seems are working better is that there are other treatment systems. For example, instead of putting people on ventilators, it seems that providing people early with oxygen through respirators and other things prevents the need to put them on ventilators. So we are gradually, science and medicine is gradually getting on top of this. But I come back to what I'm saying. Yes, there are people who are obviously depressed and unhappy. Something has to be done about that. People who are obviously in financial arrears, something has to be done about that too. People who are losing their jobs, all of those things. That, however, determines, it seems to me, the nature of the governmental response to the problems within the economy and within society. At the moment, what we have seen is a response which has been focused very much on big corporations, on the financial markets, rather than people who are maybe in debt, who may be in mortgage issues, who are possibly at risk of running out of food, who are all in all of those sort of things. You can find ways of addressing those problems. Of that, I am sure. And if you ramp up testing, and that means antibody testing, as I said, ultimately, then you can start, it seems to me, going for particular regions to start reopening those also. But I am worried that some of this talk about reopening economies now may be pushing this too fast.
Well,
and that's what I'm hearing.
Okay, let's
get the science end.
Okay, let's just get down to brass tacks here,
Yeah.
okay? Yeah. What does it mean opening up the economy?
Yeah.
Restaurants and cafes? No, probably not, okay? Probably not.
I'll push back on that and I'll say yes.
Okay, look.
If you do a policy of say, every other table, maybe only a certain amount of people inside, and outside, only a certain amount of people at a table. For example, no more than 2-3 people. I'm saying creative thinking.
But that's what I'm getting at, Alex. That's exactly what I'm getting at. We have to be creative. We can't have an either or, closed or open. What does it mean? And last time 1 week ago, we were sitting right here talking, and I kept saying, what does it mean to open the economy? What does that mean? Okay. Now we're beginning to talk about what does it mean? Okay. Now, places like Amazon, I mean, Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world. I mean, if he doesn't give all of his employees protective gear, then he should be put on trial, okay, for threatening public safety, okay? I mean, there are a lot of people that have vast resources, and it's time, to go full throttle on this. If you want to save your business, help save the economy and start working with the labor unions and your workers. Okay, this is a crisis here. What I'm just saying is that to be creative, be open-minded. Like Uber drivers should have, I guess you guys know the name of the mask, but it's that special mask you can have and gloves and things like that. And if your customer isn't wearing a mask or a glove, then you don't pick them up. I mean, it gets down to practicalities, okay? And I brought up restaurants and bars and things like that because that's the obvious extreme, okay? I'm thinking about retail. How do we get retail back online here? Because retail is being murdered right now, at least the walk-in retail, all right? Have an online ticket to go shopping, okay? Set up your app, okay? You want to go shopping? 10,000 people, or 5,000 people can go shopping in the mall today. Okay, get your pass. We'll send it to you electronically at the door. Security, shoots it. Oh, you got a pass? Go ahead, go shopping. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying open is it everybody just starts walking around again. No, I'm sorry, Al.
But Peter, this is the point. You can do all of those things. You can reopen cafes, but you have to do it in a very structured way. You have, and that's what doesn't seem to be properly addressed at the moment. You can say, and I read the plan. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all of this, but what we've learned over the last couple of weeks is that if you just say cafes can reopen, but they can only have X number of people and there has to be social distancing there, some people won't observe it. And that creates all kinds of problems.
Yeah, okay, but
then you're talking about enforcement mechanisms. It can be done.
But if you own a cafe, you have the right not to give service. If
I don't understand.
If you're threatening the public, okay? Just say, get the hell out of here, okay?
It can be done, but you have to create structures to make it work properly. I know of companies, by the way, the Russians are very big into this, where they test their workers, they decide who's fit and healthy to be put into work. They give them masks, protective clothing, all of those things, and that way they're able to resume work. I'm hearing more and more of this is happening. I'm also hearing something like that is starting to happen in Germany. That's all very structured.
Yeah, okay.
We're not getting anything like that in most places. That's
what I'm saying is, why can't I spent 10 years of my life in a little town called Wheat Ridge, Colorado, outside of Denver. Why can't Wheat Ridge, Colorado, say within the confines of the city limits, okay, cafes can be open from this hour to this hour. Here's an app. All of the cafes got together and they made this app. And these are our policies. And if you don't follow them, you're not going to get service, and you actually might get in trouble for endangering public safety. But for me, I don't like big government. Big government is lethargic, it's slow, it makes a lot of mistakes. I don't know, do you hear about this guy that got $8 million sent into his bank account? He kept waiting for the 1,200 dating day after day, and then 8 million showed up, okay? That's government for you, okay? So why we need to have local authorities, get their hands on the horns here and say, these are going to be our rules, all right? I think someone like me, who's a very sociable person, I'm sick and tired of sitting in my apartment. If the corner cafe, so it sent me a message, Peter, you can come from this hour to this hour. We're only going to be able to host 30 customers today. You're one of our best customers. Here's, we're going to do the rules. Here's the bar that you're going to shoot. We're going to shoot it at the door. So the audience will know what we're doing here, and sit and enjoy our cafe for an hour and have a table for yourself, okay? I think that's a reasonable solution. People make apps all the time. Let individuals make these decisions. Let small businesses get in the app. They have to get off their knees, okay? Give them room to be proactive. I think people will follow the rules. I think people want to get outside.
I have to say, I'm not so confident that people follow rules. That's
I live in a country where a lot of people follow rules.
That's my experience. I have to say, I think people, whenever they are, I'm sorry if I'm being a bit cynical about humanity.
Good.
That's always been my experience of it. But can I say something? If we can get into situations where people start creating apps, and cafes are able to reopen in that way, obviously that has to happen. I mean, these are the kind of things, when I say we need to start looking at the economy and how the economy works in society in a different way. Yes, and we will get there. We will get there. What I'm a little worried about, and I know not a little, I'm fairly worried about it, is that if we simply say, well, we've got phase one, we're going to start reopening on the 1st of May, and we reopen on the 1st of May, even partially, even with all sorts of rules in place, and those rules are not being enforced, then we start seeing a massive uptick in figures, or a big uptick in figures. People then start to panic, and we have another clampdown. And the one thing I think which would be a total disaster, and already people are talking about it, that we have repeated lockdowns. I think repeated lockdowns are going to take a massive, massive damage on morale, because they will add uncertainty on top of all of the other problems that we already have. So yes, let's sort out our apps. Let's accelerate work on antibodies tests. Let's also, and I really can't emphasize this enough, I mean, if we're going to throw trillions at the financial system, we can find billions to support the actual real economy. I use the expression real economy. I mean, people who work in cafes, people who work in shops, people who are worried about their mortgages, people who are worried about their debts. We might want to look at some of the proposals that people like Paul Craig Roberts and Michael Hudson are making about debt holidays and those sort of things. But we've got to think this thing through.
Yeah, but I think there's an opportunity here to start reimagining how we run our economies and for whom, okay? And I would really hope that, without the stranglehold of central governments, to loosen up and let people start taking their destiny into their hands again. And I think that would be a huge boost to morale as well. No one likes to be living in uncertainty for such a long time. I'll be honest with all of our viewers here, I get depressed now, okay? I mean, thank God I have my dogs, okay? And I can walk my dogs as much as I want. I mean, Alex, you understand me, hey boys, you wanna go for a walk? And they all go crazy. Now I say it for like the 8th time during the day. So I think we'll take a nap now. It's like, we wanna go out again? Because I'm an antsy person, and I do my best thinking when I'm walking around looking and thinking about things. So I agree with everything you're saying, but we have to let people start having a sense of controlling their destinies.
Yes.
And not being denied it creates a great deal of societal depression.
I'm going to say what I think. I think that April has been very tough. I think we're going to see May is also going to be pretty hard. I think that towards the end of May, a lot of the structures that you're talking about will start to be in place. What I'm a bit worried about, and I'll be straightforward about this, is that people are pushing the envelope on this by a number of weeks too fast. I still think that we will be getting effective drug treatments sometime.
But Alex, at some point in time, I'm afraid I have to say this, and again, it's cold pragmatism. We're going to have to bite the bullet at some point here, because we can't continue living in this. I mean, we live in very modern, sophisticated, complicated societies. You can't turn them off. And when you do, it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to turn back on, okay? And so the longer we do this, the more uncertain the future is, the quicker, and with all the caveats that you mentioned, all of them, okay, the more we can get back to a semblance of a life that we can recognize, okay? Maybe we can do a separate video. We'll ever go back to the way it was before. I tend to doubt it, okay?
We won't. It's a short answer.
A reasonable, a resemblance to it, okay? Because having such a sophisticated society, it is very difficult to turn it off. And Alex Christophor has brought it up, and it's always lurking in the background. It's intensely political as well, and it's a very charged issue, and we have to be very careful to make very, very calm, cool, collected, decisions here, because I already see in the media people just going batshit crazy on both sides.
They're going crazy, and we can't forget a couple of other facts. The numbers, every number they've thrown at us has been so way off, completely way off. Every number, the amount of infections, the amount of deaths, every single number, every single algorithm that they've run through their damn computers, and all the models that they've thrown at us have been to scare the hell out of us. You go to the market when you're allowed to go to the market and shop, and people are actively, moving away from you.
Yeah,
This is not normal. My question is what if they just let people live their lives? What would happen if they let us live their lives as the summer approaches and nothing happens? Do people get sick? Yeah. Well, wait. Do people get sick? Yes, but we do have treatment. And this is the part that really pisses me off, is we know that proper exercise, vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, hydroxychloroquine. I said it wrong the first time I saw the live stream. Hydroxychloroquine. Thank you for correcting me, everybody. We have this treatment. Let the doctors do what they do best. Give them the drugs and the medicine to treat. But we don't have a cure for the cold or the flu, but we do have treatments for it. And we do have common sense. And we know to stay home, and we know to get rest. And we know that we should take this medicine and that medicine. The doctors know what they should do. What if they just let us live? What would happen? Look at Sweden. Look at countries that are handling this in a different way.
Well, death rates rise. That's the trouble, and not just death rates, but at that stage, healthcare systems start to come under severe pressure, and they're turning people away. So that in Sweden, you bring up. Can I just say, Sweden is now refusing intensive care to people.
All of the projections have been wrong,
and is refusing people. We're over 60 intensive care if they have underlying conditions. So that's always the risk. The risk you run is that you see healthcare systems start to break down and death rates spiral. And that is a real concern. I mean, unless everybody I'm hearing from is lying to me, and I don't believe.
Well, I don't think that's a strong word, lying. But I mean, let's go back to Christopher's points. Yeah. All of the models were wrong. And of course you can expect this from me. They'll never be held accountable for it, but the rest of us have to pay for it. Okay, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here. Okay, because I don't think there's a real discussion in the mainstream media about it, because in the mainstream media, people are looking to score political points. They don't give a damn about people. The worse, the better for the left. And in the US, they just want everything to crash, okay? So they can score a point against Trump. Well, shame on them. Okay,
Well, I don't accept that.
People.
I mean,
But my point is that again, I'm agreeing with you on how to deal with this here. But I'm sick and tired of listening to these experts in their apocalyptic projections, because none of them have come to fruition. Thank God. Okay.
Well,
but I mean, we have to take that into account. I'm begging authorities all over the world, give me back my agency. Let me make some decisions for myself too. I'm a reasonable person. I know not everyone is, okay?
Yeah.
But most people are.
I'm going to say this, and I'm probably not. Again, what I am hearing is that the models that governments worked with tended to be over-optimistic. They assumed that only a fraction of people who became infected would become ill, and that there was a massive number of people who were infected who were not in fact becoming ill and not appearing on the numbers. It turns out that isn't the case. It turns out that you're more likely to become ill if you are infected, and you are more likely to become seriously ill if you become ill. And death rates have been creeping upwards, and that's pretty much everywhere, including in places like Germany. So the problem is, we still don't have very much data.
I mean, okay, death rates creep up, but can't you make the same argument if you just had a very, very bad outbreak of the flu? For example, 300 people have died in Russia, correct, Peter, Alexander?
Yes.
That's a country of 140 million people.
Yes. Yes.
300 people have died out of a country of 140 million people. I mean, let those numbers sink in.
Yes, but that's because action was taken to slow the progress of this thing down. So borders were closed with China. Lockdowns, however partial, were imposed. Extensive testing has happened, and there have been treatment in hospitals, very well organized treatment, by the way, as I understand it, with respirators and ventilators and all that. What we can't say is how many people would have died or become ill by this point.
How many of those people had underlying conditions?
Well,
how many of them had underlying conditions? How many of them were over 65 years old?
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be cruel here.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at this,
Peter, everybody who dies of a multiple of conditions. The older you get, the more fragile you become, and they are the people who we know. I mean, can I say we know? That is the point. Is, do you want to expose your older population, people over 60, and it? By the way, the figures are starting to lower. Do you want to expose them to a situation like this? So we have to be very. What I'm trying to say is, yes, we must work towards reopening our economies. Yes, we must keep parts of our economies going. We need, as I said, we need to have electricity. We need to have water. We need to have the internet. We need to have phones working. We need, above all, to have food distributed. We need all kinds of things. Yes, we need to supply and support people at the front line of things, but we mustn't underestimate the gravity of this illness. I should tell you something. I know 2 people now who died.
No one's underestimating this. My point on all of this is, when you're sick.
Yeah.
I'll take myself. I'll give 2 examples here. When I'm sick, sometimes I'm sick with a light cold or light flu. Sometimes I get hit with a really hard bug. I've had bugs where it's knocked me out for 10 days. And I mean, knocked me out, where you have to go to the hospital or you have to go to the doctor. Yes. I mean, everyone understands their own system and how it works. Yes. And every type of virus that, at least that I've gotten in my life, I mean, sometimes I think it's the cold, sometimes I think it's the flu, sometimes I think it's something else. I don't know, but I find ways to get over it.
Yes.
And I find the proper medical care. Yes. That's the first part. The second part is you have guys like Chris Cuomo at CNN, our friend at CNN, who goes on TV and said, I'm positive for CV. It really kicked the hell out of me. I chipped my tooth. It was so bad. I was seeing visions of my father when I was going to sleep. His wife now is positive for CV-19. And the other day he was in the Hamptons outside playing with his kids, looking to buy a house. Both of them are positive. Nothing was going on.
Yes, I know.
He was fine. How do you explain? That's my point. What does it mean to be sick with CV-19? What exactly does it mean? I mean, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos. I see a lot of the news channels bring people out. Every story seems to be completely different.
The reason is that we have no resistance. So it depends very much on the strength of our individual immune systems. And as you become older, your immune systems become less effective. So to give an example, sometimes though, it can hit very badly younger people. I know one person, I mentioned her several times, who's 30, and she came very, very, very close to being hospitalized. And the only reason she probably wasn't hospitalized was because the NHS doesn't help. But I mean, for her, the illness went on for weeks, and she had severe breathing problems. And at times she really was very, very frightened about what would happen to her. So you get all kinds of things. You get people who become infected and their immune systems are so strong, or they become infected in a very small way that they don't develop anything, and they're not even aware they've been infected. They are around, again, the numbers are being adjusted. It's between 25 and 50% of the number of people who become infected, who don't develop anything. We don't know what that means. I mean, 25 to 50%, that's a huge variation. Yes. So already we see that statistical sampling is not particularly precise, even on something like that. And then you get other people who become ill and recover, and they recover in about 7 days. And then you get people who become ill, and what the problem with that is that they also get waves. It comes back in waves. Mm-hmm. So you get ill for a period, then you think you're much better, and then it hits you again. And it can hit you very hard when it comes back. And then and I know people who've been like this too. So you have different types of people affected by this in different ways, depending very much on the strength of your immune system.
At what point do you take your chances?
Well, some people say, exactly.
Your life is ruined. You have no job. You have no money. I mean, at what point do you take your chances? And I'm not being glib right here, because I'm agreeing with you that all of us have. Alex Christopher has put it perfectly. We all know ourselves.
Yes.
I remember when I was about to graduate from high school, I had the Russian flu, and I was terrified because I'd never felt so weak in my life. I really felt I was touch and go, okay? But I knew my system, okay? And thankfully, I was very young at the time to battle it back. So, but I mean, the moral in here, but at one point we have to take our chances.
Well,
can't be held hostage forever, because then there'll be nothing to go back to.
The problem there, of course, is that you run the risk of infecting others. And that's where we're talking about. And I come back to this, a structured way towards reopening. Obviously, people can take their chances up, but if you're going to let people in cafes, if you're going to start reopening shops, if you're going to start reopening restaurants, you have to, maybe you accept certain risks for yourself, but you have to be careful that those risks you are accepting are not going to be transmitted to other people. And I come back to what I'd say, maybe it's partly my own past experience of life. I am not very trustful of how a lot of people would behave in those circumstances. So, you've got to think about these things. I'm not saying there are answers to them. There are answers to them. If you ask the right questions, you will always come up in the end with the right answers. But you've got to ask the questions. You've got to think things through. And all I'm saying is that a rush to start reopening things because people are frustrated, which they are. People are depressed, which they are. People are, worried about all sorts of things in their lives. But a rush to do it may create more problems down the line, which may be greater than the ones we're facing now. That's all I'm saying.
What if it doesn't create those problems?
Well, the trouble is, Alex, we don't know. We don't have all the data, but such data as we have, and it's incredibly incomplete because we've never been exposed to anything like this before.
Can I pause you there, Alexander? Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
If this is, this may be a stupid question, but I want your thoughts on this. If this is the pandemic that will bring the world to its knees, which is what we're being told, and the lockdowns are showing this, why don't we have all the information on what's going on here? I mean, you're saying we don't have all the information, we don't have all the data, we don't have all the transparency, and I can start from China in November, December, all the way till today.
Well,
this has been out there since November, and today is April 17th. Yeah. Why don't we have a better understanding of what this thing is?
Well, first of all, it is a new thing. I mean, we haven't had much history of this disease, but the other reason is because people have been lying. There's been a massive amount of suppression. I mean, we're only getting dribs and drabs of information. Why? Well, because we come back to the politics of this. The politics have not been terribly good, and that's been putting it mildly. There's been a massive amount of suppression of information, but
why though? Who does it benefit? That's what I'm trying to get at. That's why I don't know the answer. Maybe you know. Who does all of this benefit? Why is this happening to us? We're being told to do all these things. And I agree with you, Alexander. That's what drives me crazy, is we don't have a clear understanding as to what this is. And I think we have had enough time. Well, we've had 6-7 months of this.
Right. Let's start. Some governments, and I will say this, the government of China at the beginning weren't transparent about this. They had more information about the risks of this infection in the early part of January, certainly by the early part of January, probably by December, and they didn't circulate it. That was one thing.
And so, the WHO has not acquitted itself very well.
No. So that's one thing. The other thing is the scientific and medical worlds have been very, very reluctant to admit that they lack an understanding of this, and to share data, and to give proper guidance to ministers and politicians and officials around the world. That's the second thing. And by the way, that also relates very much to the WHO. The WHO at its beginning was all over the place. I mean, it was telling one thing in public, it was tweeting that, the Chinese were saying that there was no human-to-human transmission, and it was simultaneously giving teleconferences with governments saying to them, well, actually, there might be human-to-human transmission. That is utterly duplicitous behavior, which creates mixed messages and creates problems. It is not, I'm sick of, tired of reading in the British media that people say that the fact that they were giving different guidance somehow means that the WHO are okay. On the contrary, it was a tremendous betrayal of what they should have been doing. Then I'm sure there's all kinds of things going on with drugs companies. I'm sure also that there are politicians who are playing all kinds of games. All sorts of people are doing this. We will eventually get there. Again, I can't emphasize this. I think it's taken longer than I'd expected. I thought it would be over by the end of April. It looks like it's going to continue until May. By the summer, we will have a much clearer understanding of what's going on.
All right. Peter, any other comments before we get to some of the super chats?
I think that Alexander McGears is right. I mean, I would probably maybe prioritize them a little bit differently, but I think he hit all of the right notes there. First of all, I think, let's be very, very clear here. From what I know, from what we have discussed over the last few weeks, the lack of transparency from China is a very important element in all of this here, because you're understanding, there was an understanding what was going on based on a false baseline, okay? And when you get off on the wrong foot, it takes a while to catch up and figure out, okay? Also, different countries deal with in different ways. The United States doesn't have a national health care service, okay? And unfortunately, you have a lot of members of the hospitals, pharmaceuticals, equipment people, they all have their different take on it because they're still looking at profit, which of course warps how government, the US government, for example, can react because it has to take into account private interests, and private interest is based on profit, okay? And that is showed the US to be in a major weak position in dealing with this right now. It has the highest number of cases in the world, the highest death count, et cetera, et cetera. That's no coincidence. And of course, you, Alex Risfor, mentioned a number of times, and it's really a sad reality, but it's a political football, okay? And people are using it to their political advantage at the expense of us, okay? People that are, particularly as speaking as an American, my constitutional rights are being assaulted left, right, and center. I could go on about that for a very long time. And we have to claw it back or it's gone forever. That's the trajectory of this. If you don't fight for it, you're not going to. So we should know more. And I think that unfortunately there wasn't more of an international, I'm avoiding the word global, an international approach to this. I think there is elements of that. But then again, politics gets in the way of it. I can remember watching Tucker, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and he had a scientist, a reputable person, and he was talking about his Chinese colleagues. And of course, Tucker, because this is a bee in his bonnet right now, well, how can you trust that? I mean, he said, well, I know these guys have worked with these people, okay. And, unfortunately, politics clouds a lot of how people understand this. And I'd even throw Tucker Carlson, one of my favorites, into that category as well. I mean, if you really want to go to real extremes, look at Lou Dobbs. I mean, he's out there in the stratosphere, okay? We have to find out how this happened, how it went along, and people should be held responsible for it and accountable for it. And you know what would be really good? How we all internationally can work together to avoid this happening again. That would be a very interesting lesson from all of this. But you know what, folks? I don't see people in power wanting to learn any lessons. No. Congress is on vacation right now as we speak. What kind of responsibility? And they take a phone vote, okay, pass all of these bailouts. There's no record of who voted for what. What a bunch of cowards. Cowards. Yeah. They have the power and they walk away. Yeah. They walk away from their responsibility. Who's left with not paying rent for 2 months in a row? Who lost their job? 22 million people. And you're bailing out cruise lines. Are you crazy?
Well, this is exactly the point. Can I just say something, Peter, quickly on what you said? I mean, in my opinion, you're quite right to distinguish between international reactions and globalism. Globalism has made international cooperation far more difficult than it would otherwise have been. If you'd had governments which had felt secure and confident about themselves and were cooperating together as sovereign entities rather than as some kind of globalized village, that would have been infinitely better. And if you had a situation where the United States ran its own pharmaceutical industry and produced its own face masks instead of having to import them from China, it would have been better still. And what's true of the United States, which is going to be able to organize all of this very quickly. Can I just say, we must never underestimate, I've had some backlash from some people about this, never underestimate American economies of scale. They will get this organized. In Britain, we don't have those economies of scale and we don't have joined up government either. So getting chemicals, medicines, face masks, gear, all that sort of thing up and running is going to be far more difficult because as a result of globalization, we've lost a lot of the skills and the resources to do those sort of things.
Yeah, you emptied out your toolbox.
We emptied out our toolbox. And you were talking about the fact that, we've got ourselves, what will the world be like afterwards? Firstly, there's going to be a massive psychological shock. But secondly, we have to rethink. I mean, this really is a vivid example of why globalization is dangerous. It's dangerous.
I think being a geopolitics and a political channel that's why I wanted to get this conversation on those lines.
Yeah.
And my hunch on all of this is, my gut feeling is telling me that I would like this problem to be focused more on public safety and health, and helping people get well, those that are sick, and helping those that are well live their lives. But I think that there is a lot more politics and a lot more sinister forces at work.
Absolutely.
Than need to be. And that's where I think the root of this problem is. I think this is, in essence, a political problem, and it's a problem with the marriage between the oligarchy, big pharma, big tech, politicians, an election cycle that's coming up in the US. I mean, you look at Trump when he gives his daily briefings, and I listen to him and I look at him and I just can't help but think that he's fighting another battle much akin to how he was fighting Russiagate and Ukrainegate. It's just my hunch. I'm just feeling around, and that's what I'm seeing. This is, without a doubt, a political and geopolitical story, and it's tailor-made for us. Absolutely. That's the essence of what's going on.
The interesting thing is that you could comment on Trump's behavior, but it's the press's behavior that has not changed at all. No. They've just emptied out the bottle of get rid of Trump and filled it up with a new liquid. That's exactly what it is. I mean, these morons, they don't know anything about anything. All they do is wake up in the morning, can't wait to get to the briefing, and then just to try anything that they can contradict or undermine the president of the United States. Donald Trump is not a scientist. No surprise, okay? But he's taken the responsibility for his administration. He's there every day, and he takes the heat. Does he always answer well? No. But he's drawn a line in the sand. And I think that I give him kudos for drawing a line in the sand. He's owned it. Okay? And those morons in the media, they don't get that. They don't get it. That this is the kind of leadership people want. I own it and I'm driving it, okay? Come what may. It's on me. Who else in the political elite ever says that anymore? When's the last time in your lifetime someone's ever said that? It's on me. Wow, okay? I wish him luck on the topic that we've discussed extensively on here. How should we open up? When we should open up? It's all on his head right now, and he'll go down in history one way or another, depending on how he makes his decision. Okay, that's how important this is right now.
I could not agree more. I completely agree with you, Peter. Can I just say a few things about Trump? Firstly, there's been lots of criticisms of him. Who's done better? Which government in the world has actually handled this thing, more effectively? If you compare figures with the United States, the US is a big country. Yes, they have many cases in the US. Yes, they have many deaths in the US. But if you start comparing, on population terms, it's not so bad in the United States as it is in many other places. And you have all kinds of people all over the world who are perhaps much more deserving of criticism than he is. And he seems to be getting all the criticism. He is, as you correctly say, out there making decisions. They're very difficult decisions, extremely difficult decisions. He has to always balance a fine line. He has to consider the economy. He has to consider larger society. He has to consider all the health of people. What ought to be happening in the United States is that the voices, the political class, ought to be helping the president in this situation to make those decisions well. Instead, all they are doing is trying to undermine him all the time. They're trying to use this pandemic to bring him down, and that disgusts me.
What's really interesting is if you look at the media coverage of it all, particularly people on the left that hate Trump. All they do is they focus on decision-making process about dealing with a pandemic that we've never come across before. Yeah. How many of those people know anything about these at all? They don't. But you know what? the smart people, not in the mainstream and not on cable, but a lot of the YouTube channels that I watch, you know what they focus in on? They focus in on what's important, is how we're going to get out of this, and what's going to be left, okay? And the mainstream media is indifferent to that.
Yeah.
You know, oh wow, you still get, you know, your $30,000 a program and you get to do it in your own kitchen. Isn't that cute? Okay, your job isn't on the line. And see, there are two different prisms. The one that the media will present to you about, is Trump a good decision maker? Is he a good leader? Well, as Alexander McCarran said, well, we don't have any other choice. He's the guy, okay? Yeah. So, I mean, deal with that reality. But the other reality is how the rest of us are going to continue our lives. That is not focused in on enough, and not enough at all. No. Okay. And then you have this burgeoning, it's China bashing season, okay, which of course is a business for a lot of people, and I don't give any praise to Fox News for going down that path, holding China account, demanding transparency, of course, okay, but let's not get ahead of our skis. And too many people in the political realm, particularly in media, they're all getting ahead of their skis for the different reasons.
Indeed, I have to say, and I get to say one last time. I mean, I was exasperated about Russiagate. I've always felt that Trump has been terribly treated by the political class and the media. But now that it's a question of life and death,
this is existential.
This is existential, both for people who are, who are at risk from the health and for the economy, that they should continue to play these games. I mean, it just absolutely shocks me. I just cannot believe the irresponsibility and the shamelessness of it. I'm sorry, these are strong words for me. As we know, I always pick my words very, very carefully, but I'm really very, very angry about it. And that takes a lot for me to say.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is here, just get brass tacks here. Okay, Trump is pushing this stimulus to help his own business interest in real estate. Well, I mean, he has a long history in real estate, and so you should not, this is hypothetical, because I'm not really sure you need to help real estate, but let's say you need to do it. I mean, so you're supposed to, he's supposed to not even get near anything that deals with the sector of real estate because he came from it, okay? I mean, that is just absurd. And then at the same time, you have congressmen and senators that change their stock portfolio with foreknowledge of what was coming. You know, where is the focus on them? Okay, I mean, it's sporadic, but you know, you can't have it both ways. Okay, if you're looking at people that are trying to take advantage of their own personal interest in this crisis, then do it equally across the board. Okay, there's plenty to chew on there, folks. Okay, but no, I mean, it's kind of like the sexual harassment case against Joe Biden. I mean, what was it? As of yesterday, I might get the numbers wrong here, but he's done like 17 interviews in the last 2 weeks, 7 minutes each. You know, we don't want to overtire the guy. 81 questions and never once asked about the sexual harassment charge against him. That is the corruption of the media, because you know, Kavanaugh, they did everything they could to destroy his life based on nothing, okay? And here's a woman that have contemporaneous people around her that said that she had made this claim, okay? I'm not saying that what she's saying is true. I'm not, but I'm saying, I finally get to say it, you know, you should listen to women. Yes, you should. I've always believed that. And Alexander McCarran and I have talked about this a lot. He knows I believe that. Okay? So, you know, here's this rank hypocrisy, okay? Rank hypocrisy when it deals with how the Trump administration is acting and reacting to this crisis. It has made mistakes. I agree with that, okay? But then you take another one of their favorite wokeisms and then it comes out to be patently hypocritical, okay? This is the media. The media makes everything worse. It makes everyone stupider, okay? And you know what? Since I'm doing the whole circle here, Trump will win. You know why? Because people hold Congress and the media in more contempt than they hold the president of the United States. That's the recipe for victory.
And so they should hold them in more contempt, because can I just add one little thing to all the catalogue with the things you said, Peter, with which I'm in complete agreement again. Corrupt, absolutely. Hypocritical, yes. And also, it seems to me, boundlessly cruel. I mean, why not support Trump's businesses? Simply because he's the man because you hate Donald Trump so much. Donald Trump employs hundreds, probably thousands of people. What about them? Are you going to deprive them of their livelihoods because you have this insane feud with Donald Trump? You're going to support the entire real estate industry, but not his industry. So you're going to throw all the people he employs out of a job. I mean, it's absolutely shocking behavior. As I said, it's disgraceful, and it amazes me that more people don't call them out on this. I sometimes despair of the behavior of people in the US.
I mean Alexander Christopher already brought it up, and I think it says everything. You know, Chris Cuomo tested positive, his wife tested positive, and he's out in the Hamptons having a good time.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
All you need to know about these people.
Yes, I know. I know.
They despise us.
I know.
You know what? One of the most interesting things, and I think history will record this, if you look at the 2016 election cycle and the 2021, do you know why Trump won in 2016 and why he will win in 2020? Because the political and media classes have contempt for the voter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It will win him support, because the people of the United States, as I do believe, by the way, at a fundamental level, enough of them see through this. And I'm going to say also something else, which is about Donald Trump himself. His resilience and ability to take all of this just never ceases to astonish me. And that, to my mind, I'm sorry, I'm talking more about Trump than usual, but that to me says that he's the right man to lead the country.
The interesting thing is that, you know, presidential historians always talk about how the office changes the man, but he's changing the office. Did you see the presser 2 days ago with the video? Alex Christopher, you and I commented on. I mean, did Steve Bannon give him that idea? I don't know. I mean, the thing is that he knows this is a battle. This is a bloodbath battle, and he's going. If he says if those are the terms and conditions, then he's going to be willing to fight it. You know, others would have just caved. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden. I mean, he is a wet dream for the left because he will do everything they tell him to do.
Exactly.
Okay? He'll sign anything. He'll say anything.
Anything.
Okay. All right, that's their greatest dream. They need to basically what they want, and what they're probably going to get is an avatar for a presidential candidate, and they will fill him with their dreams, okay, and our nightmares, okay. I mean, history will look back upon this and say, what were they thinking?
Peter, did you read Obama's statement of support for Biden? because what he said was, I mean, it's quite bizarre. He gave it away. He said he'll be surrounded by all sorts of capable people. In other words, he meant be making his own decisions. All these capable people will be making them for him. I mean, really?
Yeah, and
that's what you want as a
And they didn't have a teleconference. You know, hey Joe. You know, they didn't do that. Hey Joe, I want to just give you a call. No, he didn't even want to get his hands dirty. Okay. No, you know what? You know why? You know, because it's all his legacy.
Yeah, I know.
It's his legacy that he's fighting for in his multi-million-dollar mansion at Martha's Vineyard. Okay. I guess they're not so worried about global warming because he's on the beach. Okay. I could go on and on. But anyway, I mean, I saw that. I thought it was hysterical. It was just like, I remember when I was teaching English in Poland in the 1980s, and I used to do this a lot, the quotation marks. And they said, well, why do you keep doing that? Because they don't do that in this part of the world. And I said, when someone does this, it's two hooks picking up shit, okay? That's exactly the Obama endorsement of Biden.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some super chats, guys. Chris Chris Cuomo actually broke his brother's quarantine. Yeah, he broke his brother's quarantine. Good point. All right. From Linda Anderson, a new member to the Duran community. Thank you, Linda. Welcome to the Duran community. From Christopher, $2 super chat. You'll need a capitalist holiday to beat this one. All right, Christopher, thank you for that super chat. And for that comment from Simon Coates, £5 super chat. Would you take a vaccine if it was barcoded and had your name printed on it?
Well, there's a whole huge story to have about vaccines, which I'm not going to go to. I mean, I'm generally in favor of vaccines, but go on, Peter, go on.
Not a barcoded one, though, Alexander.
No,
I was going to be a bit snide and was going to say, how does it go? Let me think of how I just went through my mind here. My choice, my body. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, can I just say it quickly also? I mean, we were talking about, you know, who's suppressing things and who's manipulating this. There are some very sinister people who are in the world of vaccines, and we did a video about a certain gentleman recently, and you know, we do need to be very careful about this, and we need to be very transparent. There needs to be transparency about it also.
Yeah, too many conflicts of interest.
There are far too many.
A lot of money to be made.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna get a ton of negative comments for what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think this demonization of Bill Gates has just really gone way too far. He is not a doctor, and yeah, but you know, people make a big deal about it. He has spent a lot of money, and it's highly contentious. Okay. But thinking that this guy has evil intent. I mean, people do things that result in bad things. I agree, okay? But I mean, I've actually looked at the history of what the Gates Foundation has done with vaccines, and it's highly controversial with a lot of people, but it is serious at the same time. So, you know, Bill Gates, you know, he can't, your Microsoft, your software has viruses. How do you think you could get rid of this virus here? Well, that's just a kind of a snotty comment, okay? And it doesn't help at all, okay? What I'm just saying is that I'm not coming to defense of Bill Gates, but what I'm saying is that people should have a more dispassionate look at a lot of the things the Gates Foundation has done around the world, and come back and tell me it's been all bad. And I don't think you actually can say that. Okay, so can people just kind of back off? I mean, I hate this piling on effect. It's mindless, and this is what the media wants you to do. Think for yourself. You know, filter it through before you make a decision. Okay, that's
but he has to give some pushback on that. Some of his programs, specifically in India, in South Africa, and in Africa, have caused a lot of suffering. His vaccine programs, a lot of suffering, and that's.
But to be fair,
there's a can't excuse that.
There's a whole industry that wants that piece of business that pushes that back against him. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're looking at market shares, who's being able to make the decisions, who's getting subsidies. Okay, keep that on board too. This is a very complex discussion and debate. Okay, and I don't regret bringing it up because it's not so single-minded as so many people claim it is. Okay, my 2 cents. Okay,
here's what I think is Bill Gates' biggest flaw, his biggest character flaw as to how he's handling it, and I think it's very simplistic to say, but here it is. He is tackling the vaccine issue like he tackles software. He thinks that you could reprogram people's RNA and people's DNA in much the same way that you can program software. All these Silicon Valley billionaires, unfortunately, they are transhumanists. They believe that the human body can be tinkered and tampered with in much the same way that you're writing code. And it's extremely, extremely dangerous. In my opinion, I think it borders on sociopathic. People cannot be treated like they're like you're coding. And that's why I think Bill Gates is completely flawed. He thinks that he can create this system where he can code how the human body works. And I think that's just a flawed way of looking at the world. That's a simplistic way of putting it, But I think that's the biggest flaw with not only Bill Gates, a lot of these Silicon Valley multi-billionaires.
Yeah.
That's how they approach life. And that's wrong. They don't have faith. They don't have belief.
Yes.
That's their biggest flaw.
I would just add to this briefly that it's what Peter said. He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist in this field. So why is he involving himself so much?
He's being involved. He's being involved. Look at the way, is he forcing himself into the news? I don't think so. He's being asked.
Well,
okay? I've seen almost all of his recent interviews because I made it a point.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, I don't see he's pushing his agenda on anyone. You can disagree with his agenda. I think Alex Christopher had a very interesting critique, though I may not necessarily agree with it, but it's a very interesting critique. I mean, again, where is this coming from? Is he pushing himself into this, or is he being pulled into it?
Well, I'm a bit more. I'm a bit more skeptical. I think that the fact that he's appearing so much is partly because he wants to be there. That's my own personal.
I had a very different impression there. Yeah. The thing is that for good and bad reasons, he has been involved in virus reduction around the world for actually a very long time. I know about the cases in South Africa and in India. I know very well about them. Okay, and one can make very critical, scathing comments on them, which they have been made. Okay, but it's not as if he just injected himself a month ago. Okay. Okay, he's been involved in these things for a long time. Again, I'm not defending the Gates Foundation and all that. What I'm just saying is it's a complex discussion, and I think reasonable people should delve a little bit deeper into it. Okay, that's all I have to say about Gates.
Okay.
Awkward moment of silence.
Awkward moment of silence. Alex, you? Hello. Oh, we lost him. I think we've lost. I think we lost you for a moment, Alex. Alex?
Yeah, we're breaking up. I don't know if you guys can.
Yes. I think you froze for a moment because
the weight of the internet is too much. Everyone is online. Let's get through these super chats because I don't know how long we'll be able to hang on here.
Yes.
All right, let's go to Valley S, $40 super chat. Thank you very much, Valley S. As always, we hope you are well and safe. Thank you, Valley S. From Mike V. Peter, $10 super chat. Peter, during World War II, the U.S. could turn out one bomber plane every 4 hours and a tank every hour. How is it that the same military...
And a merchant ship every day.
How is it that the same military industrial complex can't produce enough masks at the same production rate?
Because it orients itself to imaginary threats to make a ton of money for its shareholders. That's the simple answer right there. They make things that they don't need, and things that we do need, they don't make, because no one of all the contract. Look, over the last 40 years, look at the people that have run the Pentagon. They just come from the aerospace industry. It's a revolving door. It's, they get, we need a contract for this. Well, do we need it? No, but it's a good thing. Okay, we'll make a lot of money off of it. And then you serve in the Pentagon for 4 years, then you come back and you'll be an executive. It just goes around and around and around. They're not prepared for real threats. They prepare with trillions of dollars at the end of the day for imaginary threats. Okay, because it's good business. It's a profit center. National security, in a sense of health security, it never got on their radar. Never got on their radar, okay? And this is a pathetic injunction against that type of thinking. Will anyone learn from that? No, because there's just too much money involved, okay? Yeah, they can do all this laser stuff and stealth stuff and all that, but they can't make a mask, really. Put that in proportion, okay? Really.
Alexander from Toilet Sauce, €10, super chat. A dairy farmer told me a few weeks ago that the lockdown doesn't affect him because he works with cows all day and he hates people anyway.
Well, good for him. I mean, speaking seriously, one of the things we need to bear in mind is that, the farmers and the farming industry, they are also being hit at this time because, of course, at the moment, they are having great problems, apparently, distributing the food that they're growing. And they are the absolutely vital people at the time of the economy. So in keeping us all, fed and together. But isolation can only be taken so far on a farm and everywhere else. Humans are social beings, as Aristotle said all those centuries ago.
All right, from GEC 1112. $10 super chat. I'm with Peter. Liberty over the 90 state. I'd rather just get sick while protecting elderly. P.S. Imperial College London has a history of their models being wrong. Swine flu and foot and mouth.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was so devastating for the UK as well. I mean, I don't want to be taken out of context here. And I want to err on the side of much of what Alexander Makiris has said during this podcast here. Everything he said, I have taken on board. But we are social beings, but we do have agency, and we need to keep that in mind. Okay, protecting the elderly and the weak around us should be our noble obligation. That's the problem with postmodernity. The postmodern condition is it's always somebody else's responsibility. No, responsibility resides here. Okay. I don't want to go into great detail because it's my personal things, but I have my orbit of people around me. It's not a very large one here in Moscow, and I'm making sure all of them are being taken care of, okay? If they need help with money, if they need help with anything else, they need a connection, they need someone they can need, even a personal physician, I put myself out there because I practice what I preach, okay? I'm responsible, and I try to be responsible for the people around me. And if we start having that return to that very basic, eternal idea about the human condition, we can get through this faster and maybe create a more humane, sensitive society. Because that's what we're losing in this postmodern condition, is always looking outside for someone else to do something for you. And they might or might not, but it'll be their own personal interest to do it. It won't have any kind of authentic nobility to it, okay?
Yes.
So protect our elderly, protect our most vulnerable, and don't wait for the government to do it. If you know an elderly person in your building or on your street, maybe if you got a dog, walking, hey, you doing all right? Just wave, okay? We're here. People are here. And I don't want to sound really naive, but this is the basic building blocks of what community is, okay? And I'm very, very upset, particularly with authorities in the United States curbing religious practice, okay? Let the churches figure out how they're going to do it, okay? If you're going to have sequestered marks on the ground, in a parking lot or something like that, that's their business. You have a right to practice your faith, okay? But at the same time, taking on board what Alexander Makiris is saying, you're hoping you're dealing with reasonable people, and unfortunately not everyone is.
Not everyone.
Part of the calculation.
Okay. From Don Costo, 199 super chat. Alexander, what kind of dog and where is Jay Mifsud?
Well, very good question. Where is... where to?
You can answer the dog first. The dog is the easy one.
$1.99.
The dogs.
But that is priceless, okay?
Priceless.
The dog is the easy one to answer.
The dog is the easy one. Well, I have two golden retrievers that I would not be without, but for some reason they're not here at the moment, so I don't know where they are. But Peter has his dogs.
Mine are at my feet.
Yeah, I couldn't live without my dogs. It's actually something that I discovered. I'm very worried about them, by the way, because at the moment we're still able to walk them. But if anything happens and they confine to the house, it's going to be very, very tough because they're high energy dogs. Joseph Mifsud, does he exist? Has he ever existed? Is he a real person? I've always wondered. I do seriously ask myself these questions. I don't know where he is. Word is that he's in Rome. I wonder whether he isn't at the bottom of the sea somewhere in a metal box.
Or
if he ever existed.
Or he'll end up as National Security Council head in a Biden administration.
Yeah. I mean, I say that because obviously Papadopoulos did really meet someone, but there is so much uncertainty about this individual that, as I said, I do wonder whether this isn't I've come round to wondering whether this isn't a fabricated identity, actually. But anyway, no doubt we will find out. Durham and Barr are on the case.
All right, from GEC 1012, $10 super chat, multiple scientific papers, peak CV19 spread to weather. It likes 5 to 11 degrees Celsius with low humidity, yet they've shut down all Australia. Have you heard much about this? Kim Iverson is good on this. I actually saw Kim Iverson's video
right.
on this. It's not on YouTube. They won't allow it on YouTube, but I saw it on
I've read this, and in fact, there's actually a very interesting Hong Kong University study, which is perhaps the most authoritative on this, which is that in fact it doesn't like this infection doesn't like high temperatures, and that is perhaps one way to look into this properly. I mean, apparently outside the human body, its optimal temperature, the temperature it likes most, is 4 degrees centigrade. It's just pretty cold, 4 degrees centigrade. So the higher the degrees goes, the less likely it is to survive outside. And perhaps, here's a point I would make, and this comes back to some of the things I was hearing. Having people going out in the sun is actually probably prophylactic. It's actually good for people. And if the weather is hot and people are going out, and it far from people being rounded up because they're sunbathing, for example, it's probably a good thing if they're sunbathing. I have to say, I have to add qualifications to this because these are just things I've heard. But these studies about temperature are interesting, and they may point to good ways forward.
All right, from Brando Commando, $10 super chat. U.S. will slip close to a depression, but bounce back. 75% of the job lost will return, I think. Also good on Trump to punish the WHO. They refused to criticize the guilty party and instead put down the United States.
Well, the first half, let me react to that.
Yeah.
I think it's way too early to make that kind of prognosis, okay? And essentially the question is saying that we'll get a V, maybe. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that because of the interruption of the economy, there's some very good companies out there, though the situation has put them into a hazardous situation. They are going to be the subject of takeovers. And I'm really worried about a further consolidation of the economy. So we're going to have companies that are beleaguered right now, but they may be under pressure by venture capitalists, vulture capitalists, to sell out. And so we saw that is a pattern we saw out of 2008, 2009. And I think there's every reason to believe that kind of consolidation process will continue. And I would find that abhorrent because, again, we're seeing the separation of wealth, okay, of massive inequality. And I can't really conceive how you may get a V, but that doesn't necessarily, it's going to be very helpful for working people. Again, these, and I've mentioned this almost since the first time we've ever done a podcast together, is that I always am very wary of these macro numbers because it doesn't really tell you the condition of quote unquote, I guess what a normal family would be, which is speaking about the United States, it's a huge country and there's so many variations, but a V doesn't necessarily, it's going to be good for working people. Keep that in mind. Mm.
All right. From Marcia Dietrich, $10 super chat. Wonderful, heartfelt conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia, for that. From Brando Commando, $10 super chat. Even if Trump doesn't get reelected, he's already won the Triple Crown, wealth, fame, and power. That's what his presidency was all about. Ego. He wants to be remembered. He's not a Republican. He's a 90s business Democrat.
Well, whatever he is the president of the United States, and he does seem to me to be doing everything he can to try and help the United States through this crisis. And that's my feeling about this. And I don't think he's getting the support from the rest of the political class, which includes, by the way, the media class, which he is entitled to at a time of crisis like this.
Well,
okay,
there's never
from
one,
Logan River.
Anyone like him, never will be again. So, I mean, love him or hate him, he's a historic figure.
He is indeed, absolutely.
Okay, from Logan River, $5 super chat. Gentlemen, great job. Love your courage and diverse critical perspectives. Alex, in particular, you are top notch, especially on Gates. Haha, much respect. Thank you, Logan River, for the $5 super chat. From Asavet MD, $15 super chat. Treatment and freedom, not vaccines. Thank you.
Well,
Asavet.
we will come to that much sooner than we will get vaccines. And vaccines we need to look at very carefully. The disaster, in my opinion, the potential disaster with vaccines is if it becomes monopolized. And I am very mistrustful of monopolists when they start, especially working with vaccines. So we need a diversity of vaccines. We need a proper, we need proper control tests. We need all sorts of things, but that's a long way off. Treatments, drug treatments, all kinds of things like that, they will come very much sooner. I'm not a prophet. I'll be very surprised if we don't start to see real progress in that way happening before the early summer.
You're not a prophet, but you won't profit from this.
I know.
All right, the final super chat, and we are done because the internet is breaking up a lot on my end.
Right.
So final super chat, how can Big Pharma say a CV vaccine will be provided in 12 to 18 months when there's never been a vaccine for any CV ever? And that comes from Tingles. That's a £5 super chat. Thank you for that.
Good question. Very good question. One thing I've heard, and this is, again, I want to stress this is what I've just heard, is that this is actually a relatively simple microorganism, and it hasn't evolved very much. And that does increase the prospects of a successful vaccine. But I come back to what I said before. Vaccines may be the longer term solution, maybe to future outbreaks of this. But if we're going to get out of this now, drugs treatments are more likely to get us there. In fact, they will get us there. Of that, I am sure.
Well, right. in the same vein, okay, again, I'm being cynical here, of course. Well, then, I mean, if you're looking for a vaccine for the CV19, why don't we just do it for the common cold at the same time? And the influenza, because how many lives do they take every single year? Okay, it's always been, what is proportional in all of this? And I don't have the answers, okay? But I do see that there's a tendency to err by overreacting, and then I want to take it much more piecemeal, okay? And I may be proven completely wrong by thinking this. We're all at home. We have plenty of time to talk about these things. You're next week, okay?
Yeah.
That we are. We'll end it there, guys. Thank you for everyone who joined us on this live stream. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you for all your questions and the discussion. This was a really good live stream. Peter, Alexander, any final thoughts from your homes? What are you guys looking at this week?
What are we looking at this week? Well, as I said,
CV.
CV.
What else?
Well, I mean, life does go on beyond CV. There are all sorts of things going on in the world, and we haven't talked about this much, but it seems that there's been a quiet withdrawal by the US military from the Middle East, which is apparently gaining momentum. Partly it's been done, I think, undercover from CV. So, we need to look at that. But of course, if we're closer to home, there's talk that British Parliament will be reconvened. We will see what comes of that. I mean, it'll presumably be a virtual sitting, which is going to be very bizarre. And we'll see what Mr. Johnson does when he comes back from his medical treatment. Because at the moment, and this is the difference between Britain and the United States, there's no captain on the ship on the bridge in Britain. I mean, there's no real sense of clear direction from the government about what people should do.
Well, I'm going to stay with obviously this topic for the duration, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be focusing on how it affects real people. I'm really worried about these jobless numbers coming out. I'm worried about this consolidation. That it's not if, it's when and to what degree it's going to happen. So I'm going to stick with working families and their plight, because it's not getting enough coverage. And of course, being the political animal I am, I'll always be watching how other people are using it for.
Well, indeed.
Okay. I mean, I just can't help myself. Okay. So,
I mean, yeah. Can I just add on one other thing, which is, of course, one of the oddities and one of the sad things is that all sorts of news is coming out from the United States about the extraordinary abuses of power that took place in 2016 at the 2016 election. So we're looking at Barr and Durham. We've now got a grand jury convened. We're looking at potential indictments very shortly down the line. Barr has said that he does expect there to be indictments, or at least that's how I understood him. So we mustn't lose sight of that, because there is a sickness of the body, which is what we have with this particular infection, but far more dangerous is the spirit of the mind, and the attack on the constitutional system of the United States, such as it is. I mean, and that was, to my mind, incredibly dangerous, far more sinister than anything else that has happened in US political history for as long as I can remember. So, we need to keep focused on that too.
Okay, what I'm about to say is for our regular viewers, they'll understand what I'm going to say, and I hope you have a good chuckle with it. We can end this way. Yeah. Is that if and when, and I hope there will be indictments, the Barr is talking about with the grand jury, when there are indictments, and here it comes, when there are indictments, I'll be drinking wine in the shower.
I will join you from my own shower.
Yeah, we needed to clarify that. All right. On that note, we will end this live stream. Thank you to everybody and everyone who had Easter last week. We hope you had a really good Easter, a peaceful Easter, and to everyone celebrating Pascha this week, Easter Orthodoxy, Christos Anesti, Christos Voskres. Have a good Easter, everybody, as well. Alexander, Peter, some final words, and we're signing off. The internet held up.
The internet held
okay,
up.
Well, I'll see Alexander Makiris on Sunday. Okay.
Yes, indeed. And as I said, in the end, human society will also hold up. We will come through this. I've said this all along, and we will. So I've said some bleak things, but overall, I mean, we will come through. That I have absolutely. There is no doubt. There's no cause for doubt about this. And we will have economies too, and we will see what comes. But it will all, in the end, it will end, and it will end soon.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good Friday and have a good weekend.